Welcome to Ace My Exams Learning. We are excited to have you here. Our channel is dedicated to providing you with the best study tools and resources to help you ace your exams. Let us get started with today's learning.
Introduction to Public Policy. The fundamental responsibility of government authorities and officials is to ensure that every citizen, particularly those in economically disadvantaged and vulnerable groups, enjoy equitable access to essential services. To achieve this, government uses public policy as a tool to identify specific services that communities require and the nature of developmental interventions necessary to address these needs. Therefore, government plays a central role in creating, implementing, and enforcing public policies. The policy direction of a government can be a good measure of what it's doing or plans to do at all levels of governance. It is important to note that public policy is always a work in progress and must adapt or adjust continuously to respond to the changing needs and expectations of the population it serves. Preconditions for policy development. Before crafting a particular policy, certain essential processes must be diligently followed to ensure there is a systematic approach to develop policies that are well conceived, executed, and adapted to meet evolving societal needs. These sequential steps should be followed. 1. Decision-making. This initial step involves determining the problem or the definition of the organization's objectives. It is the cornerstone of the policy formulation process and forms the basis for future policy steps. 2. Policy implementation. Once decisions are made, the policy is translated into action. This is achieved by establishing a set of rules, regulations, and guidelines that guide the actual execution of the policy. 3. Policy analysis. Following the implementation of a policy, evaluation is carried out to establish whether the policy is achieving its intended outcomes, and what are its broader impacts and consequences on the society it serves. Policy objectives. In governance and policy formulation, objectives serve to define the core purpose and mission of the department or organization. These objectives become the compass that directs decisions and helps the government to focus its actions, allocate resources effectively, implement impactful programs, and ultimately, enhance the well-being of its citizens. For example, services such as health, security, economic welfare, and education are a necessity and should therefore be considered priority objectives. Establishing hierarchical objectives in government. The objectives of the state are structured in a hierarchical order. Within this hierarchy, certain objectives are categorized as more significant than others. Botts et al. 1992 specify that objectives should have the following. 1. A hierarchical order. 2. A geographical dimension. 3. A time dimension. Let us look at each element in detail. The hierarchical order in government. Hierarchical order is a grading system based on grades of status or authority, where each level or entity is ranked above or below another. This hierarchical structure is a fundamental aspect of government organization and decision-making and enables government to function within a pyramid-like structure, where activities flow downward from the highest level to the provincial and local levels. The central government is always at the top of the pyramid from where the activities flow downwards to provincial and local levels. This pyramid ensures there is a clear chain of command and authority, allowing for efficient governance and decision-making. In practice, the government structure is made up of three different parts. 1. The elected members, legislature, represent the public, approve policies and laws, and monitor the work of the executive and departments. 2. The cabinet coordinates the making of policies, laws, and oversees the implementation by government departments. 3. The departments and public officials are responsible for doing the work and report to the executive. Political policy. Political policy refers to the strategies, decisions, and actions taken by governments, political parties, or politicians to influence and shape the direction and functioning of a government or a political party. This is how it works. Political parties obtain detailed knowledge of all the wants, demands, problems, and objectives of society, as well as the resources available, and use this information to develop proposals to determine political policies. The winning political party outlines its vision for governance by putting forward proposals, which then progress into bills and, when approved by Parliament, become laws.
Question. Identify and briefly describe the internal factors that influence policymaking. The answer. Policymaking within public institutions is shaped by a variety of internal factors, each of which plays a critical role in determining the direction and effectiveness of policies. These factors are: 1. Conditions of establishment. Every public institution operates within a set of specific objectives that are unique to its mandate. These objectives provide the framework for policy development and implementation. It's important that these objectives are respected and not interfered with by other institutions to ensure a focused and coherent policy approach. For example, the primary goal of the health department is to prioritize public health, and any external interference that compromises this objective could lead to the development of policies that prioritize budget considerations over public well-being. 2. Political assignment. The leadership of each public institution is typically appointed by the state president and led by a minister. These leaders are part of the National Executive Council and play a key role in shaping policies. Their political affiliation and priorities can influence the policy agenda, as they bring their own perspectives and ideologies to the decision-making process. For example, the president appoints a new Minister of Environment from a different political party with less emphasis on environmental issues. This change in leadership can significantly impact the policy agenda, with a shift towards economic development or other priorities, thus resulting in the modification or abandonment of existing environmental policies. 3. Legality according to state and administrative law. Another internal factor that can influence policymaking is the requirement for policies formulated within public institutions to adhere to the legal principles established by government and administrative laws. This ensures that policies are not only effective but also lawful to promote a just and well-regulated society. For example, the Department of Education by law promotes inclusive education, allocates resources equitably, and addresses discrimination within schools. If a proposed policy were to violate these legal principles, it would be deemed unlawful and should be revised or abandoned to ensure compliance with the legal framework. 4. Financial means is another internal factor which influences policy making. Adequate funding is crucial for public institutions to operate effectively and implement policies. The availability of financial resources directly impacts the scope and scale of policies that can be pursued. Therefore, insufficient funding may hinder the execution of well-intentioned policies. For example, if the Department of Health receives limited funding, they may need to prioritize certain aspects of the health policy. They might focus on training existing healthcare staff, or upgrading equipment in existing healthcare facilities, while postponing plans for constructing new hospitals or hiring new staff. 5. The personnel abilities of the institution, consisting of the expertise and qualifications of the institution's employees. This factor significantly influences the level and depth of policymaking. For instance, qualified and competent personnel are essential for crafting well-informed and technically sound policies. These abilities determine the depth of analysis and the quality of policy recommendations put forth. For example, the Environmental Affairs Department policy team includes climate scientists who have conducted extensive research on the effects of greenhouse gas emissions. This expertise allows them to propose evidence-based policies that target the most significant sources of emissions. Last but not least, the availability of physical facilities. In order to function efficiently, public institutions require essential physical facilities such as offices, furniture, vehicles, and infrastructure. These resources enable the smooth operation of policy development, implementation, and monitoring. For instance, a public health department is tasked with formulating policies to address a public health crisis such as a disease outbreak. In this scenario, the public health department will need well-equipped laboratories for testing and analyzing samples, secure storage facilities for medical supplies, and offices for its staff. In addition, it will also need a fleet of vehicles to transport personnel, equipment, and supplies to the affected areas. Thank you for watching this video. Remember to subscribe and be the first to know when we upload new videos.